What's up, everyone? Today, we've got an intense, jaw-dropping story that you won't want to miss. About a wife who asked for an open relationship, only to regret it deeply later on. I never imagined I'd be in this situation, reaching out to strangers on the internet for advice. But here we are. My wife and I have been together for 10 years, married for 8. We met in college and were each other's first and only. So I always thought our relationship was something truly unique and special. At least, that's how I saw it. Then everything started changing. A few years ago, my wife started a new job at a company where she had trouble fitting in at first. She's always been on the reserve side, but with some encouragement from me, she managed to make friends, mostly with women, some single, others divorced or in relationships, but none married. At first, I was just happy she was finding a social group, but then things began to shift. She started going out with them more often, late-night drinks, parties, and other social activities, and I noticed her behavior changing. I didn't want to hold her back, but I began to feel concerned. This was affecting our relationship, especially in the bedroom. She'd always been a little more passive when it came to intimacy, but now, after these nights out, she was either too tired or just didn't seem interested at all. Then, things took another turn when her company hired a new manager. She started mentioning him casually, but it quickly became clear there was more to it. She was fascinated by how he handled things at work, even pointing out how he dealt with personal matters that had nothing to do with the job. I started to feel uneasy, especially when she casually asked if I regretted not having more experience with other women. When I pushed her about this new connection, she brushed it off, claiming it had nothing to do with him. But then, she started suggesting we open our marriage. This wasn't like her at all. She'd never been the liberal type sexually, and it caught me off guard. At first, I refused, questioning if this was about her new manager, but she said she felt like she was missing out, though she didn't want to lose me. After much hesitation, and probably out of my own naivety, I reluctantly agreed, setting rules like not bringing anyone home. That's when everything went downhill. Over the next year, she went on dates, had one-night stands, and eventually ended up in a full-blown relationship with that manager. I, on the other hand, tried dating, but couldn't bring myself to sleep around. The few dates I had never felt right, so I backed off. Despite everything, my wife continued to ask if I was okay with it, but nothing really changed. Slowly, I began to feel the love I had for her, the pure, special bond we once shared, slip away. Then something unexpected happened. I met someone, an amazing woman who had recently moved from South Korea. She was funny, intelligent, and made me feel desired in a way I hadn't in years. After a few dates, we were intimate, and honestly, I never experienced anything like it. She made me feel alive again. At first, my wife acted like it was no big deal, but as the months went by, she started questioning my relationship with my lover. I reminded her that this was her idea and pointed out that she was already in a relationship with her manager. That's when the silence started. She seemed to want to say something, but held it in. Then, things began to shift. My wife started coming home early with dinner, cleaning the house obsessively, and even dropping by my workplace to bring me lunch. She started initiating intimacy in the bedroom, but honestly, I wasn't sure I could go back to the way things were. There was a part of me that was gone, and I could see that she felt it too. I confronted her about what had changed. She claimed she was just trying to show me that she loved me and was happy with our marriage. But I couldn't help but laugh. I asked her about her friends, her lover, and her one-night stands. She didn't respond that night, just went to bed in tears. The next day, she came to me tearful and confessed that she wanted to close the marriage and undo everything. She said she regretted everything and wanted to focus on rebuilding our relationship. I asked her to be honest with me about what had led to this decision, and she finally admitted that it was her group of friends who planted the idea in her head. They had all encouraged her to explore, and when the manager entered the picture, he supported the idea of living freely. The affair with him became emotional first, then physical once we opened the marriage. She described it as being drunk behind the wheel of a speeding car, exciting but reckless. She now sees it as a mistake and realizes what we had was special. She said she feels like she's destroyed our marriage and any future we might have had together. I told her that I might never be able to see her as my wife again, and that broke her down completely. She cried herself to sleep in my arms, and since then, she's quit her job, cut ties with her friends, and even told me she'd work endlessly to make it up to me. But there's a problem. I haven't been able to let go of my lover. She makes me feel like a man again, like I can take on the world. I don't feel that for my wife anymore. I'm stuck. My heart wants to believe things can go back to how they were, but I'm not sure. I want that special feeling again, but I also know that my lover is the one who saved me when I was at my lowest. Today, we're heading into our first marriage counseling session, and I honestly don't know what to expect. The therapist seems experienced, unbiased, and genuinely eager to help, but I'm not sure if it's even possible to fix what's broken. In our first session, my wife confessed to the therapist that she was influenced by her friends who had a lot of sexual exploits, including the divorced ones who weren't married anymore. These friends pushed her to explore what she'd missed out on by being with me as her first and only. She admitted that it was her own insecurities that led her to open our marriage. She described it as thrilling at first, but now realizes that it was all a facade. The real joy and depth came from what we built together, something she can't get back. She now regrets everything, and I can see the hurt in her eyes. She told me she'd never forgive herself, but it's hard to know if I can ever forgive her. She said that seeing the joy my lover brings me made her realize how much she lost. Her friends tried to tell her that she needed to accept my relationship with my lover, but she finally saw them for what they are, toxic and destructive to everything we had. The gravity of her actions finally hit her, but I don't know if it's too late. I still don't know where this is going, and I don't know what the future holds for us. But this is a wild ride, and I'm not sure how to make sense of it all. From the moment my wife realized the gravity of her actions, she has been on an unwavering mission to win me back, desperate and willing to go to any lengths. Every glance, every word, every action carried an air of frantic regret, as if she believed that if she tried hard enough, she could somehow erase the past. I, however, remained distant. I shared only what was necessary with the marriage counselor, revealing the truth, that my lover was still in the picture. The counselor, ever the neutral mediator, listened carefully before making her stance clear. No resolution could ever be reached with a third party involved. She suggested another session after tomorrow, but there was something in her expression that unsettled me. She looked at my wife and then at me before saying, almost wistfully, that it was rare for someone to stay with their first love for so long. The way she spoke gave me the impression that she wanted us to be one of her success stories, a couple that defied the odds, weathered the storm, and came out stronger on the other side. But I wasn't sure I wanted to be part of that narrative. In the meantime, I moved into an apartment owned by my brother. He had offered to let me stay rent-free, but I refused. I needed to do this on my own. Being in that space, away from her, gave me the clarity I hadn't realized I needed. It allowed me to think without being suffocated by her apologies and desperate attempts at affection. During our next counseling session, I finally asked the questions that had been gnawing at me, the ones that some Redditors suggested, but more importantly, the ones that I needed answers to. I asked her if anything physical had happened before we officially opened the marriage. She looked down, her fingers twisting in her lap, and when she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. She begged me not to make her say it. If I say it, she said through trembling lips, it will destroy us. But I pushed. Through choked sobs, she admitted that while there had been no actual intercourse, they had touched themselves in front of each other. Her manager had convinced her that since there was no direct contact, it wasn't technically cheating. He told her they were simply appreciating each other's beauty, as if dressing it up in flowery words would change the reality of what she had done. I was stunned, absolutely floored. She broke down completely. She started shaking uncontrollably, hyperventilating, snot running down her face as she cried and apologized, her entire body racked with grief and regret. Even the counselor seemed caught off guard, her normally composed expression slipping into one of disbelief. My wife collapsed onto her knees, clinging to my legs as if I was the only thing keeping her from falling apart completely. I asked her what had changed her view of him. She admitted that as she started pulling away from the group, his behavior towards her shifted. One evening, as she was leaving work, she happened to pass by his office and overheard a conversation between him and another male colleague. What she heard shattered the illusion she had been living under. He had been laughing about how easy she was to manipulate. He told his colleague that she was living proof that quiet girls can't be trusted, that she had seemed so innocent but had given in so easily. When asked if he had any real feelings for her, his response was cold, brutal. He said she was just a pleasant distraction, that he never planned on leaving his fiancée, that he was just getting it out of his system. He even said he felt bad for me, but, in his words, "You snooze, you lose." Hearing that wrecked her. She ran out of the building, barely making it to the parking lot before vomiting. The weight of what she had done came crashing down on her all at once. She realized she had destroyed our marriage, betrayed me for nothing more than a cheap thrill. Her first thought was, "What have I done?" And then, "Please forgive me. I'm so sorry." I asked her if she had ever loved him, and when it was that she stopped loving me. She looked me dead in the eye through her tears, and said she never stopped loving me, that it was never about love, that she had convinced herself it was something special, something different, but now she saw how foolish she had been. She grabbed my arm, squeezing it with a strength that surprised me, and pleaded with me to give us another chance. She said she missed us, missed the way we used to be before all of this. She even suggested that we move away, start fresh somewhere new, just the two of us. Like it was always meant to be, she whispered. I shook my head. That wouldn't be fair to my lover, I told her. And I need time away from you to process everything. At those words, something inside her seemed to snap. She sobbed uncontrollably, her entire body trembling as she clung to me, as if she was afraid I would disappear if she let go. Her words became incoherent, broken cries of desperation. It took both me and the counselor hours to calm her down. Eventually, she agreed. Time apart might be what we needed. As I packed my things later that night, my wife received a video call. It was one of her former friends, sobbing uncontrollably. She had been involved with the same manager. She had a pregnancy scare, and when she told him, he turned on her completely. To make matters worse, she had a boyfriend, the man she actually wanted to be with. He found out when he stumbled upon an email exchange about the pregnancy. The manager, ever the coward, accused her of trying to baby trap him. Her boyfriend left her immediately. She had reached out to my wife because she thought we had saved our marriage and needed advice on how to do the same. I just turned and walked out the door. The friend was pregnant, but due to the immense stress of losing her boyfriend and the public humiliation of the affair, she miscarried. Something inside her snapped. She exposed the manager to upper management and even his fiancée. I looked up his fiancée on Facebook. She was a definition of a small-town sweetheart, a special needs teacher, a woman who clearly adored her family. And yet, he had treated her the same way he treated my wife, as disposable. The friend met with me in person. The moment I saw her, I could tell she was broken. Dark circles under her eyes, red and swollen from lack of sleep. She apologized for her role in my wife's betrayal. She told me that losing both a child and the love of her life had changed her at her core. She couldn't even look at herself in the mirror without feeling disgusted. She was gathering evidence against the manager, knowing full well that it might cost her her job, but she didn't care. She had nothing left to lose. I returned to my old home to grab a few things. I thought my wife wouldn't be there. I was wrong. She was sitting in the living room, surrounded by our wedding photos, tears streaking her face as she stared at them. When she saw me, she tried to hug me. I gently pushed her away. She offered to make me lunch. I refused. Then she pulled out her phone and showed me a message. It was from her former manager, from a new number since she had blocked his old one. He was furious that she had helped expose him. I thought by exposing the secret, I could take away its power, she told me. I thought it would give us a fighting chance. I told her I was glad she had the courage to do that, but it didn't change anything between us. Before I left, she grabbed me one last time, her voice desperate. "What does she give you that I can't?" she screamed. "What does she do that I won't?" I shook my head. "If you still don't understand after everything," I said, "then it's clear where our marriage is headed." And I walked out the door. She will regret this for the rest of her life. But that doesn't mean I have to live with it.